this is Sue, and I'm going to do a video on the first 10 things I do in Scrivener. There are a whole bunch of really wonderful tutorials on what you can do with Scrivener, and I highly recommend them. I've linked some in my YouTube channel. But what I thought I would do would be to approach it from a novelist use perspective, as in, when I open up a document, what are the first 10 things that I do in order to make it work for me? So we will start from the beginning, and hopefully I'll get these in the right order that I want to do. So when you open a document, you will see project templates, and we're going to write fiction. I'm going to choose novel and create. Let's call it new book. Okay, so this is what you're going to see when you first open it. Okay, this is not really aesthetically pleasing and welcoming. Part of what Scrivener is intended for is a program that will compile your document ready to hand off to an agent or publisher. And that's all well and good, but that's not what I am at least initially using it for. I want it as a pleasant writing environment that helps me work on my story. So we are going to show you how to do that. The first thing that I want to do is make it pretty. It's got to be pretty. So I have downloaded themes on here. I am going to make this rose gold romance. And the nice thing about this is if you are working on multiple books, especially if you are working on multiple books at the same time, it allows you to set like a different style, a different mood for each book. Of course, it's, as you notice, I've got several ones open, and this is going to be now the default theme for everything. But if I'm switching between novels and say, this one is now my really modern cyberpunky one, and I want to be in that mood, I might do something more modern. Let's let that. That's a very simple one. Or let's go into, let's show you another one. Let's say it's a sort of a steampunk romance or something. I have the look of a leather-bound library here. So that lets me get into a different mood if I'm swapping between writing projects. And frankly, it just makes the whole process a lot more pleasant. But so the first thing when you see when you open this up, okay, it has created a manuscript with a chapter and a scene. Okay, and I have template sheets here. So the first thing I want to do, okay, is make this a writing environment for me. Okay, technically, it's explaining all of these things about how to format your document so that when you go to compile it, everything will work. That's all well and good, but if I'm writing a novel, the writing environment has to be different. For example, like it tells you, do not number your chapters. Like do not call it chapter 1 or chapter 2. Create an envelope folder for your chapters. Well, let me bring you over to the structure of one book that I wrote for NaNoWriMo. I knew I wasn't going to have multiple scenes per chapter. I just wanted an easy way to work on each chapter. So what I did was I created, and I can show you here, add new text. Okay. I just created 31 blank chapters. Because for NaNoWriMo National Novel Writing Month, you write a chapter a day. You know, say like your basic writing goal is to just write a scene a day for a month. You might just type like scene 1, okay, and create a whole list of those. I'm going to delete that, okay, so that when you are writing, you just go right back in and you start right there. Later on, you know, I can, if I want to combine some of these into scenes, I can add, do what they say, new folder. You know, I can call this chapter 1. Okay, and I can drag these into there. Let's do that, okay? So that now I've got a scene, let's do this too. I've got 2 scenes in this chapter, okay? And I still like, it's easier for me, maybe it's dumb, it's easier for me to work on my book if I see this called chapter 1, okay? I'm gonna bring these back out so I don't confuse myself. These are all, I'm gonna bring those back out, which is not working so well. There we go. And let's get back to where I was. I'm gonna delete that. So essentially the first thing I'm gonna do though is create, and we'll go back into our new thing, okay? I've got Act 1, okay? I've got, if I'm writing a 3-act structure, Act 2, and then add folder, Act 3, okay? If I know I want, like the folders for chapters still like annoy me, but I'm gonna go with that. So I'm gonna do chapter 1, I might add, let's see, new folder, new folder, new folder, add infinitum, okay, chapter 2, chapter 3, oops, and we're going to make this chapter and not chapter, okay, and I might even go into that and just add scenes so that when I come in to write, I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta work on chapter 2, I'm just gonna go right here and I'm gonna start, okay? So I'm setting myself up the initial structure of the whole document, okay? So I have set a theme, I have decided on the structure of my document, and I'm doing this from the perspective of making it easier for me to write. I can go in later and fix things. Like what I might need to fix is going back, let's go back into my old document where I didn't do this right, okay? I have each chapter has a number, okay? And also in each chapter, I have typed in, let's go all the way to the top, chapter 4 on the top, okay? Part of why I've done this is it's easier for me to read. The other reason why I've done this is if I am submitting a chapter to someone to edit, I just want to go in here and print this one thing out. It's easier for them to see chapter 4, okay, to have this here. That way I know what it is. I don't just have this undescribed thing that I printed out. Next thing I want to do is decide my labels, okay, and those, we're going to go down here, okay. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. Okay, labels. Okay, let's zoom in. Sorry, that's out. Okay. Okay, I can use these several ways. Okay, one way people use those is they describe the major plot points. Like, let's go into this. I'm going to edit it and show you back down here so I don't make a mistake. So I'm going to call this inciting incident. Okay, so now if I look at my labels, I have red is inciting incident. Now what that lets me do is I can go back over here and like, oh, this untitled document in chapter scene 1, okay, I can set the label to be inciting incident, okay? Now, what I can also do is I can use a label color in the binder. So I will see that the color red is my label, that's my inciting incident. So this whole scene is going to be red. So what that would let me do, like, I could see, okay, oh, this is the inciting incident, this is the midpoint, okay? I don't necessarily find that too useful because I know something's happening every couple of chapters. If I am at the end of the middle of chapter 2, I know where the midpoint is. I don't need a label to show me the midpoint. Okay, what I've done here instead, okay, I have a book that is narrated from 4 different perspectives. And so I have attached a label to each person's perspective so that I can quickly see, oh, yellow is Anna, red is Peter, okay? And then these are the 2 other characters. If I wanted to, I could show background color in binder. That's kind of a little bit too much for me, so I have decided to not do that, okay? I have just set the color as the label there. I can also make little icons that show the picture of my people, but that's harder to see, okay? So if I went down to label here, okay, I see my different characters, and I've set that up for that. Another way that people use those, you can see your scenes, your chapters as index cards, okay? And we will get to how to do that in a minute. But setting up the labels, I can easily see who's the main character in each chapter, who's the narrating point of view. Okay, I have a third view where I can also see just an outline version, and I can see the label, I can see a bunch of things. But say I wanted to mainly see, if I had a book where things were happening at morning, noon, or night, and I wanted to make sure I could keep track of which one each chapter was, I would probably use my labels to define, the different day that stuff was happening, or the different time, so that then if I'm going in and looking by title, okay, I can see when in my book are things happening, okay? I can also see it along horizontal or vertical lines, okay? So if we were just pretending that yellow was stuff that happens in the morning, okay, and red is stuff that happens at noon, okay, I would see here, oh, both these 2 chapters are happening in the morning, okay, so that would mean that, oh, this is actually happening before this, so I need to make sure I've got my times right. But this will give me a better visual about like what's happening before other things. So to sum up, I can use labels either as narration, I can use them as setting as the plot points in my book, or I can use it to define time frames in my novel. And there's probably plenty other ways, okay? Another thing that I can do is set keywords, okay? If I were not, like if I want to say who is in this chapter. Okay, I can set keywords, and I'm going to go up here. Okay, and it says keywords type. Okay, I can set Maynard. Okay, he's in that chapter. I could set, who else is in that chapter? Celeste is in that chapter. Okay, so later on, if I want to search like, oh crap, which chapter was Celeste in? Okay, I can find that out. Okay, if I want to, I can also, when I go back to that, back to this view, I have an option of, let's not make that label, I have an option of selecting keywords. Okay, let me move this over here and make this a better view. Okay, so in chapter 17, I have these two characters. Okay, I could also use a keyword for like plot point, like the character's cat. Where does the character's cat appear? I can tag that, okay? If I have a particular chapter where I want big suspense, I can create a tag for big suspense. So I can make sure, oh, did I do that? So keywords are really useful, okay? Templates, okay? Let's go back into the basic document. It comes with template sheets for character sketches. We will go back out. Okay, character name, I have a setting sketch. Okay, so I could create, see I have a space here for characters. I can copy to characters. Okay, so here I've got a character sketch. Now before I type stuff in here, okay, I would duplicate it. And so now I can change this to Anna, I can change this to Peter, okay? So I can easily like have a nice space to work on my characters and my settings and not have to figure out where they are. Because I have my character set, I have a space for places here, which is empty, okay? But I would again duplicate to places, okay? So now I do actually have a setting sketch over here in places. So I'm like doing the basic population of my document to make it easier for me to write, okay? The next thing I'm going to do, okay, and we're going back into our writing view, okay? You obviously want to format your document later with a font that is a readable text font, okay? But a text font is not the same thing as a reasonable display font. Oh, okay, and here's the thing that got screwed up before, okay? Because the Scrivener will automatically put in a chapter number there. I don't also have to have it here, okay? But I want to have it when I'm looking at the document. So I want to set this up to have a font that's easy for me to read while I'm working. And so what I'll do is I'll set a default font, and that's all in Scrivener settings, okay? That's basically, if you want to do anything, just Google how to do it and it will show you where it is. You can also go into help and it will show you that, okay? But I will set a default font that is easy for me to read. And then if I want to print it out, I will set a new default font for printing so that the poor person who's editing does not have to read everything in Helvetica, okay? So making the font and the spacing that's easy for me to work with, that's important, okay? The next thing is Scrivener syncs with Dropbox, okay? I have a shared folder in Dropbox that I have set up so that if I work on this in my computer, I can later go work on it in my iPad. It's also backed up. The important thing to do is to close the file, okay? Or you will have, this one does not have it, but sync issues, because it will be open in two places and it doesn't know which one is right, okay? So set up your backup, set up your Dropbox. Next thing is, these sections of the document of Scrivener are really handy. Okay, so let's talk about these sections now. Okay, and here I've got the synopsis. I've typed in the synopsis of the chapter. This is what's happened in this chapter. So the nice thing about that is if I go out to that corkboard mode, okay, I see, and I can zoom in on that for you. Okay, I see the summary of that chapter. So I can see the summary of each chapter as it is now on the index cards. Okay, let's go back to this space underneath the synopsis. Okay, this is really useful. Okay, this is for notes. Okay, this is where I will put questions that I have when I'm writing. Basically, things that need to be addressed or fixed. Okay, so that later when I go back in to edit this chapter, I know I need to fix these things. If I fix them, I'll delete them. Okay, this is also a useful place if I've given the chapters to someone for them to read and they have things that I need to fix. Okay, I will, aside from like typos and things, I will just list, the first thing I'll do is I'll list them in here, okay, for each chapter that they've read, so that when I go in, everything that I need to fix is listed here. Okay, that is super duper handy, because I've got my text, I've got the synopsis, okay, and I've got the notes or things that I need to address in this. Okay, so we have played around a little bit with views, okay? We have the working view, we have the index card view, and we have the outline view, okay? And the outline view, you can customize in many different ways. Okay? I can sort by status. I can include the word count, so I can see the word count of each chapter. I could sort it by timeline, so what's happening first, okay? So I know what's happening first in my novel. I don't know that I do it this way. I use those other lines that I told you about before, so I can see it more graphically. But this lets you look at all of your synopses in order and track all sorts of other things. There are really interesting ways people have used this in other videos. Okay, next thing I'm going to show you is the beautiful white screen of joy. Okay, so here's composition mode. I'm just typing stuff. We'll eventually get down here. Okay, it's a really nice, let's back up, completely clear way to write. And the nice thing is, once I get to the middle here, okay, you'll notice it's got a typewriter mode, so that all of the new text just scrolls up, and I only have to look right in the middle of the screen, so that it is quite nice. That is the basic tour of the 10 things that I would do in Scrivener, so that I kind of go from this rather dull looking and unhelpful document to this, which is a much more pleasant way to read and work on my document. Hopefully this has been helpful. Check out the other much more professional